what's happening in our own backyard will challenge us to think critically, act strategically, and grow collectively. This summit reflects the spirit of our community, innovative, resilient, and committed to progress. Whether you're a business owner, a policymaker, student, a leader in the nonprofit or energy sector, or just a citizen here in Sarnia-Lambton that wants to make a difference, you belong in this conversation. A special thank you to our sponsors, including the Sarnia-Lambton Realtors, our panel sponsors, City of Sarnia Economic Development and Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership. Your support makes days like this possible, so thank you very much. So on that note, let's make this opportunity to connect, collaborate, and drive meaningful change in our region impactful. Thank you, and let's get started. So it is my honor to introduce MP Marilyn Gladue, who would like to say a few words. We're thrilled to have Marilyn here. Marilyn's a really big cheerleader and champion of the local business community, and we think she's doing a great job at driving that. Thank you, Marilyn.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the federal government and as the fourth time elected member for Sarnia-Lambton, so thank you for that support. Having doubled the size of the ring, now we have twice as many events, so you might see me half as much. We'll see how that goes. I thought I would take up the theme today. Obviously, I was hoping for a different outcome at the prime ministerial level, but I thought folks might be interested to take a look at what a Mark Carney Prime Minister government will look like and what the impacts might be to the businesses in this area, the efforts that we're making to collaborate with our partners in the US. So first of all, I always like to give a balance of the good things and the things that I think are challenging. So what I would say is they were able to borrow many of our ideas from our platform, and so I was happy to support income tax reduction. Wasn't as much as we needed because people are really struggling, but I think that was a good step. And they did eliminate the carbon tax for consumers in legislation instead of a fake executive order, so that was also good. And then there were a few bills brought in, one in particular to break down interprovincial trade barriers and to at least ensure that the federal government isn't creating more bureaucracy. That was very good. And to create an exemption process so that we can build major projects. We haven't really built anything in years major in this country because of bills like C-69, the No More Pipelines bill, the tanker ban, the emissions caps, the industrial carbon tax that's now been proposed. And this bill that was introduced provides an opportunity for government to exempt projects from those criteria. Now we did add some amendments to make sure that they are duly consulting with our First Nations and Indigenous folks, that they are doing the proper environmental due diligence, things like that. But I do see this as a positive step to try to get major projects built, because that's what we really need to do in order to respond to some of the threats that we're seeing from our neighbors to the south. There were 18 LNG projects books a decade ago. We haven't built it. One. That's it. We have an opportunity to ship that product globally and replace heavy oil and coal, which would be good for reducing the carbon footprint from China and India and the emerging world, and at the same time create well-paying jobs for Canadians and have our very environmentally sustainably produced LNG out there in the world, driving our economy and making us less reliable on our partners to the south. Now, with our partners to the south, we've seen that although during the election campaign it was going to be and fight, 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 that has really not happened. I see that small businesses were happy that Canada didn't do counter tariffs, because in many cases it was hurting our own businesses. So I think that was good, but the uncertainty that has been introduced by the constant churn with President Trump and the lack of a cohesive plan on what we're going to do differently, and the slow pace of diversification to find other markets, to build things domestically, I think is concerning. I know that the financial markets are concerned about the $486 billion of spend that has been announced without a budget, against the will of Parliament, and without a plan. They are saying we may get our AA plus rating reduced to AA, which would increase the payments on the interest on the debt from maybe 75 billion currently to 100 billion. That's a permanent structural deficit, very hard to recover from. And we know that that kind of spending will drive inflation. It did in the last decade, and we saw the highest interest rates and inflation that we had seen in 40 years. So I would say that Mark Carney has shown that he's able to overturn disastrous policies of the previous government. I hope that he will consider doing that, because there's a number of them that are really standing in the way of Canada being resilient in the middle of this uncertainty and trying to create a stable environment for businesses to invest in and for our country to be competitive in. So I look forward to hearing all of the interesting ideas today and to continue in partnership with all levels of government and our community to make sure that we can ride out this storm and come out on top. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, who is going to be our keynote today. From BDC's Business Center, he's the manager of the Business Center, not the expert, as he told me earlier. Michael Abella.
Almost. Hey everyone, so definitely not an expert up here, just someone who has a very unique experience, I guess you could say. Let's see if this is working. It looks like it's working, perfect. So again, Michael Abella, I am the Business Center Manager that covers this geography, we'll call it, everywhere west of Ayr, Ontario, so covering all the way from there straight through London, all the way through to Sarnia-Lambton, this being a big part of our geography. And I have the pleasure of leading the team of development bankers that work with a number of the businesses in the room, as well as those in the Sarnia-Lambton community. So I've got a pretty exciting role. Now, one word that came up about 3 times by Marilyn here, and we're hoping that maybe it doesn't come up too often, is the word uncertainty. I think it is a word that continues to come up over and over again. So we're gonna call it building resistance in a changing world, as opposed to an uncertain one. As we go through here, so this is a nice little graph. We can think of it as pre-2020 and today. So recent uncertainty and volatility has resulted in a compressed planning cycle for business owners. And if we think back to a year ago, for those who were here, we talked about building efficiencies into your business. But building efficiencies isn't necessarily totally sufficient when in reality, based on our market demands and market pressures, the planning aspect has to just completely shift. So prior to now, if we're thinking pre-2020, that first horizon in a stable market, that 1 year is your short-term planning. You've got a clear understanding of what's happening in your market, the rules of the game, and how you play. 2 to 3 years out, you've got your midterm planning, some assumptions holding firm from that first year of planning, but also you've got some educated guesses on what volatility may occur in the next horizon based on elections upcoming, you see some foreign political turmoil, policy changes on the horizon. And then that 3-year mark, your long-term planning, which is mostly based on trends analysis and educated expectations. So today, it is entirely different. So fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that first horizon from 1 year is now 1 month. We've got 30 days to do your real short-term planning. That 2 to 3 years is 2 to 3 months. And that third horizon, that long-term strategy, is really now down to about 6 months on average. So what it means is you have to plan ahead, but you also have to really put a lot of thought into accepting the fact that the way we did things a few years ago will not work going forward. I don't like to use this term, but the new normal is really what we see here. that really shortened and compressed planning cycle. So we're going to go through a few things today. Hopefully it's educational for everybody here and interesting, that you can really put some forethought into to help make life a little bit easier for those who are business owners. So that first horizon, what is it that you're able to do now? So the first thing to do is assess your company's financial situation, your financial health. You want to be able to quickly evaluate your financial leeway using different indicators and ratios. So try to stay away from those gut feelings. Financial health generally falls on the accountants in the room and the bookkeepers, but I think it's something that all business owners need to become very familiar with and comfortable with. We're going to use a little analogy. I'm going to use this throughout the rest of the next, we'll call it 10 minutes or so. And evaluating your financial health in times of market volatility, which is the current reality, is just like preparing your car for a long road trip. And really down an unnavigated path, we'll say. You don't know what's ahead, so you have to make sure your car's key components are ready for the trek forward. The key components for a business on the financial health side are liquidity, profitability, productivity, and leverage. And we really focused on that productivity last year, but what we come to learn over the last 12 months is that productivity is not the main key factor here. It is really a combination of the four. So each key category has its own financial ratios, key performance indicators. However, this is not a financial management lesson, because I'm sure that none of you would want to stay in the room. However, I can redirect you to the incredible BDC team that's here, as well as our website with a plethora of tools to help you start down the path of understanding financial health if you're not an expert in it for your own business already. Having the right tools is always important to manage your finances, but in times of market volatility, it is crucial. For example, if changes in market conditions force you to reevaluate the pricing of certain products, you want to be able to count on an appropriate costing tool that you can rely on in order to help you get to that right dollar amount. Each one of the tools you see here, I see here because I've got it all over the place. Each one of the tools you see here has its own purpose, and they're complementary to one another. So they don't stand alone as a sole tool, but all working together is how you will have the best outlook on your financial health. The same way that you want to be able to count on your car's brakes and tires, transmission maybe, when you're on the road, you want to be able to count on the key tools for your financial health to help you be proactive, agile, and most of all, make the best business decisions based on and supported by reliable financial data. If you're not sure how to do this or who to rely on, it's really smart to start investigating the right key financial partners to help you in your business. A lot of people think of your accountant, your bookkeeper as just additional expenses, when in reality, these are the key players that will help your business be successful. So the next step is to understand how vulnerable your business is to potential shocks. And I think right now, a shock can be as small as a tweet. So don't wait for clarity on details of what will come into force. Start running scenarios now. Small caveat here is be honest with yourself. It's really easy to plan for best case scenario or try to ignore what could be worst case scenario. Don't do that. You're just setting yourself up for failure. Preparing for best case scenario and is planning for a bumpy road. Planning for the best case scenario rather is really just planning to fail. Create different scenarios to see how different changes in economic conditions could impact product prices, volume of sales, or gross margin percentages. Run all potential scenarios, as we say. Planning for the worst, ideally you want to hope for the best, but hope is not a strategy. Do this exercise. Doing this exercise can help you answer questions such as how would a 25% higher price impact change the demand on my product? Or can I absorb a drop in sales? Can I absorb the additional new costs that might result from a potential tariff? Things of that nature. So at this point, you've measured. You're all financial experts on your own business. So the financial health health of your, so you know the financial health of your business. You've also made sure that you use quality financial management tools, and you've ran multiple scenarios and financial impacts to have a really solid understanding of what could be the future. What's next? Put together a simple plan that contains key action items. For example, adjust your production or delivery, delay certain expenses and investments. It might not be the right time to invest in certain capital expenditures. It would be the best time. Review contracts with key customers or suppliers, and insert new clauses in key operating agreements to make sure that you're protected. Work as a team. Work with everybody that touches your business. Ensure that each item in your plan has a timeline and a person accountable for seeing it through. So you should reach out to your key customers and suppliers. This is very important and something that a lot of business owners can be leery of, and we just hear that from our clients. You don't want to upset your customers, but also you don't want to disrupt your suppliers. But at the same time, you are a customer or a supplier to them as well. So it's one big massive ecosystem, and instead of being fearful, just address it. That way everybody is working from an even playing field and everyone's being honest with each other. Talk to your suppliers, ensure that they'll be able to deliver. That's key, right? Then call your main customers and confirm their existing and planned orders are still on track. And then if they're not on track, inform them. Predictability is key in volatile times. So this might seem like very basic, obvious things, but what we see with our customers is that these things just don't happen. Explore low-hanging opportunities, again, as simple and straightforward as that might sound, to improve your offering and improve your customer's experience. Very simple example that could resonate in the room. A restaurant owner who's adding more plant-based because that's what their customers want in their particular market. That might be a solution. Not necessarily overly complex, just a change in what they were doing previously as their regular day-to-day. Working with your lawyers and your accountants and financial advisors, you may also explore other ways in which you can approach clauses in your contracts or with how you sell or your costing in order to make sure that you are the most profitable as possible. Buy Canadian. So we should touch on this. We've seen a sweeping buy Canadian sentiment across the country. People want to buy more products and services made in Canada, which is great, and it also opens up more opportunities. Buy Canadian is a pretty loose term. It might be an American product assembled in Canada. It could be an American product or a foreign product that just has Canadian employees or Canadian people working to complete that product, whatever that might be. But buying Canadian ultimately means taxes are staying in Canada, revenue is staying in Canada. So keep in mind that there are certain requirements to be considered Buy Canadian, and you can get that from the Competition Bureau of Canada. They will be able to help clarify what you could then sticker as a Canadian product. It's also an opportunity for Canadian businesses to do more with other Canadian businesses. So reach out to your network, talk to your existing suppliers. The Sarnia-Lambton community has a great ecosystem. Very lucky here to have that. It's not true everywhere. Leverage the business ecosystem that is here, because business owners can support other business owners instead of going outside of our borders. BDC did launch a cool campaign. Buy more Canadian products has real impact on our economy is the theme that we realized. So buy 5, high 5 was a pretty simple, straightforward strategy that we leveraged LinkedIn and all different forms of social media for. We launched it in the spring, and we felt the immediate impact and the attention to Canadian businesses and companies. Second horizon, and they get a little bit tighter now, is that 2 to 3 months out. So we're going to go to that midterm section that we talked about, and really this comes down to reviewing your cost structure. So this is when you want to make sure that you are analyzing every expense that's going into the products and services that you sell. A line-by-line review is really how you do this. Taking a look at that total margin number, that total expenses amount, is too global of a view at your financial, too global of a view of the income statement in particular on your finances. What you want to do is really understand those line-by-line details. You may also consider phasing out or putting on hold certain lines of expenses that don't necessarily need to be continuing on. Reevaluate your pricing strategy. It's a good time to start talking to your customers. If you're not talking to your customers, someone else will be. So it's obviously a little tricky because you don't want to, upset anybody, but at the same time, we are in a very squeezed planning cycle and a very competitive market, whether it is foreign entities coming after your clients or it is other businesses in Canada. Talk to your customers and understand if your pricing strategy is the right one. When it comes to pricing strategies, there are some examples of various tactics to look at. You may have a higher margin product line or markets where your clients are less price sensitive. You may be able to change your pricing strategy on these items to be a little bit more profitable, if at all possible. And that can compensate for the lower margin or the more price sensitive markets that you might play in. Continuously monitor the impact of your pricing changes on the sales, on your behavior, and be prepared to adjust accordingly. We've talked a few times now about the compressed nature of the planning cycle. That just trickles through every aspect. Third horizon, like I said, they get a little tighter now. It's an urgent, so as urgent as the situation seems, you need to keep an eye on that long term. And while, a few years ago, long term was really 3 years out, now it's only a few months out. So you want to keep an eye on what that long term really is, understanding that it's going to change, it's going to evolve. Every tweet, every news article, every policy change, everything that happens globally will impact a lot at the same time. So that third horizon, don't lose sight of it. Longer term strategy for building the resistance that you need in order to maintain success. When it comes to those longer term strategies, make your business more productive through technology, automation, and also market diversification, diversifying risks on both sides and sales and from your suppliers. The most productive SMEs do perform better in certain situations. So productivity is key to business competitive and directly affects your company's financial health. So our analysis looks specifically at Canadian small, medium-sized businesses, SMEs, and businesses less than 500 employees. Should clarify that. I had that in brackets. We saw that compared with other companies in the same sector and activity with virtually the same number of employees, productive 10%, and the most productive 10% of Canadian SMEs generate 6 times more sales, approximately 4 times more in profits, and 3.5 times higher EBITDA. So efficiency is really the key. We talked about it last year. It still rings true, but it's just a component of those 4 main categories. Assess how productive your business is today. So productivity, again, still very important. So there's been a lot of talk recently about business productivity in Canada. There's a lot of articles that are fully accessible that have been put out by Financial Times, Globe and Mail, through the federal government and various entities thereof. StatsCan in particular does a really great job of publicizing a lot of information on this. And ensuring that this is a persistent issue, or understanding it's a persistent issue, is the direct consequence of having not invested in technology in Canada, and we are behind. This isn't a Sarnia-Lambton thing, this is a Canadian thing. We are behind the entire rest of the developed world. We are not efficient as a country when it comes to how we operate and how we do business, and we aren't super productive. So finding ways to add productivity and really doing that deep dive is going to help you stand out globally, not just within Canada. Technology can solve multiple challenges. It's not going to solve everything. Sorry, there we go. Perfect. Sorry about that. So take full advantage of all the machinery and technology that's already within your business. Find ways to optimize wherever possible. Software does a really great job of that, especially for the manufacturers in the room. We see a lot of companies investing in new machines and software, but not utilizing them to their full potential, which is unfortunate. A machine costs a lot of money. You spend $1 million on a CNC machine, you want to make sure that you're getting every single penny out of it you possibly can. So fully utilizing what you already have is the first way to boost productivity and cut your production costs. Technology is one of the most powerful allies in optimizing your business and reducing costs. It doesn't have to be a huge expense, it just requires some effort. Effort being time. It can be as simple as getting your business out of Excel spreadsheets and getting rid of paper and pencil and moving to a more online or cloud-based software in order to track your KPIs in real time. Don't forget about artificial intelligence based on tools like ChatGPT or Copilot, which BDC is a huge proponent of. Just be sure to use proper cybersecurity practices. We hear a lot about that as well. And then geographic diversification is definitely part of a long-term strategy, but something that you might be able to leverage in the short term as well. So most Canadian exports flow through the US. It's undeniable. The US is our biggest trading partner. They're our closest and really only bordering country. So, and their economy is 10 times the size of ours. So in terms of having the best possible customer, it's to the south. But opening new international markets is complex and a long-term strategy. You have to start somewhere. So whether that is moving into some of the other free trade agreements we have with the European Union, several Asia Pacific countries, as well as countries in Central and South America, and interprovincially, you can also leverage other professionals in the room, like our global trade partners, in setting up a strategy that works for you. However, selling to more customers in Canada, despite all of the global aspect, is the quickest way to diversify geographically. You're working with the same currency, you're working with the same language in most instances, and a client base that you're able to communicate with easily. There are many ways to diversify business though, whether it's customer segments, creating new products, offering new services, targeting new industries, varying market channels if you decide to sell in different ways, and also investing in new equipment. Picking something and starting is really what's going to help move it along for you. Key takeaways. I don't want to be here forever. So we've given you a few strategies here that we've gone through, and I believe Robin is going to be able to make this presentation public to everybody, which is great. So you can take it away. It's about adaptability and agility. And about adapting the resilient mindset that we really need to have, because change is a constant and it's a guarantee these days. So review your financial health, get a firm grasp of it, understand it, and find ways to fine tune it. Cut your costs where you need to, improve some productivity wherever possible by ideally leveraging what you already have, but making additional purchases or changes could be that next step. Diversify wherever you can, whether that's within your market or geographically, and reach out for expertise. Third-party professionals like your financial advisors, your bankers, your consultants, your lawyers, your accountants, these are all people. While you pay for them, they're providing you a service to make your business stronger and better. Have to put a plug in, BDC is here to help. So there's two main key components that BDC does. We provide loans, capital, and consulting on the financial or on the knowledge capital side to improve performance and resilience of a business. On the advisory side, there's a lot on here, but we do touch on a lot of ways where we can just help from the advisory standpoint. BDC is not just here to lend money, we are here to help you be more sustainable and more competitive, both globally and locally. Two things that might be really important to a lot of business owners right now. There are programs that were deployed through the federal government. So we've got a Pivot to Grow loan and a trade resilience plan on the advisory side. So when it comes to the loan itself, this is a working capital facility to help overcome some financial pressures that could result from tariffs, whether they're directly impacting you or indirectly through your supply chain or your customer base. And on the trade resilience side, a consulting strategy working with professionals to help navigate change in ways that you just haven't had to in the past. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. I encourage you, if you are here for the day and you have e-business, Michael will be here for the day. Have a chat with him. This is, it's always been really important to have this information, but more than ever, it's really important now if you own and run a business. So on that note, it is my honor to welcome our MPP Bob Bailey, who will also be introducing Minister Thompson.
I'm not going to make a crack about Joe Biden. He's out of the media now. What we getting up here? Everybody knows I've made that. I said that last year, so I had to say it again. Anyway, well, thanks. Good morning to everyone here today, and of course, thank you to Carrie and to Robin and all of their organization for everything you do. As always, it's wonderful to be here at the Sarnia-Lambton Chamber of Commerce to connect with colleagues and friends, especially in beautiful downtown Point Edward. I'm here today and have the pleasure of introducing my good friend and caucus colleague, the Honourable Lisa Thompson, our Ontario's Minister of Rural Affairs. She's been a strong voice for rural Ontario and continues to show her passion for our small towns and rural communities all across this great province. Minister Thompson is going to share more about the work our government has been doing and continues to do to create and bring this enabling opportunity to Ontario's rural economic development strategy to life. We're very excited to let you know that we have made some important changes to the Rural Ontario Development Program, which is at the heart of that strategy. These changes have made it an even better program for funding vital projects throughout rural Ontario. These are projects that will protect workers by helping small businesses grow and thrive, on helping local governments improve downtown accessibility, and appeal by repairing or replacing benches, lighting, and other infrastructure on our main streets. And this program can help the owners of our small businesses plan for the future, unlike as BDC, the presentation by Michael said. And this program can help owners of our small businesses plan for their future. This is just a taste of what the program will do. And as Minister Thompson said 2 weeks ago in Clinton at the launch, when her and I were there to announce to rural Ontario, she announced the intake launch of the Rural Ontario Development Program. This program and these investments matter. They matter because the projects will fit to the needs of the people who live, work in, and raise their families in our rural communities across this province. There are 3 pillars our government is supporting to meet our vision, in which Minister Thompson will talk more about in just a moment, where we have the kinds of rural communities right across the province of Ontario that we want to call home, where we work, play, and raise our families. It is a vision I know you all will share. It is reflected in the work that organizations like the Sarnia-Lambton Chamber of Commerce do every day, supporting and promoting small business owners, connecting them with customers and with each other, as part of a business that offers help every step of the way. This is about building resiliency. There's that word resiliency again. In your community, among small businesses, across local governments, that our government is proud to be working with you to build that strength in the face of an ever-changing world. I'm proud of the ways our government is working to create that economic stability, to enable more folks to start small businesses and to raise their families in our rural communities. The kind of stability needed for people to reach their personal and professional goals. And make no mistake, as a Chamber of Commerce, your goals are our goals. And your vision for thriving businesses and a healthy workplace here in Sarnia-Lambton. This is a vision that our ministry works every day to achieve for all of our rural and small town municipalities in this province. Once again, I want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to be with you here today, because we want you to know that this government is committed to really making a difference in rural and small town Ontario. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our proud rural Ontario. As Premier Ford called her, one if not the strongest champions we have at Queen's Park for the interests of small and rural communities across this great province. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming my boss, the Honourable Lisa Thompson, Ontario's Minister of Rural Affairs.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it. Well, hello, everyone.
Knock me off the stage now.
You know, I'm not Bob's boss. He's Uncle Bob to all of us, right? But with that, I want to say it's a pleasure to be here. And Bob, wonderful opening remarks. I appreciate it so much. I hope you all realize how fortunate you are to have amazing representatives both in Toronto and Ottawa. Marilyn, great to see you again. I love the vim and vigor that you present when we talk about holding people to account, making sure that we are indeed moving in the right direction. And Bob has such a subtle way about him. You don't know how successful this gentleman is. To give you one example, as a member of provincial parliament for Sarnia-Lambton, he is the most successful provincial politician in getting independent private business through as legislation. I believe right now you're sitting at the high mark of 9 or 10 pieces of private members' business?
I think it's
10. 10? Oh, he said 10, but who's counting? Yeah. So, you know, the trick is if you ever want a piece of legislation through, go to Bob because he's got a good, proven track record. And Carrie, thank you so much for the invitation to join you. And a fun fact about Carrie, I first knew Carrie was having this amazing opportunity to make a difference for Sarnia-Lambton with this particular chamber when I ran into her at Queen's Park. And it was awesome, and it just warmed my heart because, fun fact, I could easily call Carrie Skin, and you would all say, who is that? But Carrie went to high school with my sister Lana in Wingham, and her brother-in-law has a dotted connection back to my husband. My husband's actually an honorary brother to her brother-in-law, so it's a small world. How do you like that? But we need to get to business. I want to start by this. This is interesting. The script that was prepared is 2,031 words, 120 words per minute. Tells me I have about approximately 16.9 minutes to get through all of this so you can get to lunch. Well, guess what? Just like Premier Ford, I go off the script all the time, so good luck to us all, right? But there's so much to talk about when we talk about small town and opportunities throughout our rural communities as well. And I just want to let you know that I'm joined as well, just not by Bob. Vike Fruch is part of our policy team. He loves the economics behind supporting small business. And I want to give a wave. There he is. And Scott Duff has joined us as well from the Ministry of Rural Affairs. Scott, do you want to give a wave? And I can't tell you how proud I am of the team that is growing at the Ministry of Rural Affairs. We're here because we believe in small town rural Ontario. We're here because we truly want to make a difference because we believe in the opportunities that lie ahead for all of us. And to that end, I want to talk about our ministry. We're brand new, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I've had the honor of sitting at the cabinet table since 2018. And prior to being Minister of Rural Affairs, I was Minister of Agriculture. And I was really, really proud of the work we did. But in conversation with the Premier, I always was lamenting the fact that we were never getting to rural economic development in the way that I was trained to do it. My very first job, ladies and gentlemen, was a rural economic development officer. And I knew there was so much more that we could be doing. And he said, well, do you want a ministry? And it's like, hell yeah, yes, I'll gladly separate this out. And why does it matter? For years, in opposition, and even before I was elected, I would hear about the need to have a rural lens. Well, ladies and gentlemen, through the leadership of Premier Ford, I had a eureka moment a few months ago when I realized, oh my goodness, you know, my shoulders just got a little heavier because the Ministry of Rural Affairs is indeed now that rural lens. And part of our mandate is to work incredibly well with all of the colleagues that we have around the cabinet table to make sure our voice is heard, understood, and that the entire government knows that we are a willing partner to make sure that rural small towns aren't forgotten about, but most importantly, programs are designed to fit the needs of rural Ontario as well. You know, from energy to transportation to economic development, job creation, and trade to infrastructure and finance, there's so many ways the Ministry of Rural Affairs has already worked to positively impact rural Ontario. And I'm going to give you a few examples. The Ontario Transportation Infrastructure Fund is providing millions of dollars in southwestern Ontario to expand transit services and to help connect communities. You know, I was recently part of nearly a $1 million funding announcement in Lambton Shores, which I got redirected through again today, which was interesting to me, but that's a story for a different day. But Steve was very accommodating, Steve McCauley, and of course His Worship accommodated both Steve Pinsino and myself to make an announcement that matters. The Huron Shores Transit is something that matters to so many of your communities here. And whether it's people using that transit system to get to work in Grand Bend, or for students to get to college, or for people to achieve transportation for medical appointments. This is an important piece of transit. And what I really liked about this particular project is with our support, it has sustainability. And there's more municipalities in Huron County that are looking to get involved. And I can tell you that it's just not a finite busing system. I got back from Calgary last night at 11:30. Fun fact, that's why I have this croaky voice and probably a cough here and there yet, excuse. But with that, you gotta love airplanes. But I met with Uber when I was in Calgary. And local rideshare is very, very important. And when you have a great team like you do in Lambton Shores and with Huron Shores Transit, you know, they're open to seeing and exploring what the opportunity is. Carrie, what's your theme of the day? Innovate, collaborate, and elevate. And I think this transit system is an example that we can use across Ontario. Example. So that's just one. And that's where I went off the page, so sorry in advance. You know, another $529 million investment is creating 18 heart hubs across the province. And there's a demand for so much more because of the success of the initial 18 heart hubs. And I can tell you that the one that you already have here in Sarnia-Lambton is really successful. Bob, you announced it just a few months ago, I believe, and your particular heart hub here in Sarnia-Lambton is going to be receiving $6.3 million in annual funding for homelessness and addictions recovery support. And it's working, and communities are lining up to wanting to be next. So congratulations on what you're realizing here already. We had another $100 million expansion to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, which is also having a major impact on every small town and every municipality across the province by recognizing rural Ontario's need for municipal services upgrades. And we talked a lot about that. I actually met with MNP in Calgary just a couple of days ago. And you know, there's a dotted connection back to this area because they have offices throughout southwestern Ontario as well. But a key thing is really understanding the assets that you have as municipalities and how to leverage those assets and make sure that going forward there's an opportunity to best grow and maintain. And Bob and I had an interesting conversation earlier this morning in terms of making sure that when it comes to managing assets, we have a very real approach that makes sense to our small municipalities as well. And that's a conversation that we need to continue to have. And we're here to work with you to make sure your voices are heard in that regard. And then over 60% of our municipal housing infrastructure program and housing enabling water system fund is now going to small, rural, and northern municipalities. You know, I'll never forget maybe when one of the first streams came out, there was a heavy focus on how many houses are going to be built. And so in talking to Minister Surma, but I really heard the aha moment when I was talking to her chief of staff, when I said, look at 30 houses I'll say in Wyoming, has just as big of an impact as 300 houses in Brampton. And you could hear that light bulb go on for her chief of staff. And he says to this day, he's never forgotten that. So they are very in tune with the impact that matters. And so we look to build in that spirit with all of you as well. $1 million from the Building Faster Fund to rural and northern communities as well. But you know what, I really want to talk about the exclamation point behind our government working with rural Ontario like never before is just not the creation of the Ministry of Rural Affairs, but actually the work that we're doing. This past year has flown by, really and truly. You know, we announced this new ministry in June of 2024. We started touring the province. And on January 6th, I traveled from Sudbury over to Sault Ste. Marie by car once I got up there. And they're going, "What are you doing up here in January?" And so I actually took pictures of my husband digging out my car to get to the airport. And this is why. More snow in Bruce County than they did in Sudbury, so that laugh or two. But we and listen, ask questions to understand, ask questions to clarify, but most importantly, work with everyone to make sure that our North Star, if you will, was going to hit the mark for everyone. And we were so incredibly pleased through the fall, and Scott, I know you guys put in such an amazing effort to enable me to announce, there's the word enabling, I love that right now, to enable me to announce at ROMA, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, a strategy for small town rural Ontario called Enabling Opportunities. And we're going to be laser focused, as the Premier says, to make sure you guys and gals have the tools that you need. You know, we had in 2024 a virtual rural summit with over 200 participants. And then again, we traveled twice over through the fall and January to land with this. But it really represents everything that we heard. And I'm proud of it. Enabling Opportunities, Ontario's Rural Economic Development Strategy, is as I mentioned, a Northern Star for us, but it takes a whole of government approach to building capacity and strengthening rural communities. And together we've made sure that the investments make sense and are